But we begin on a decidedly different note. The NFL's domestic violence policy under scrutiny again is our big story. Seahawks defensive tackle Jarran Reed will be suspended the first 6 games of the 2019 season for a violation of the league's personal conduct policy. It stems from a 2017 domestic violence incident in which Reed was accused of assault. He was never charged nor arrested, but the NFL's personal conduct policy allows the league to punish players regardless of legal outcomes. Reed issued a statement saying, in part, I apologize to those close to me for putting myself in a position where I could be disciplined by the NFL. While I totally disagree with the decision of the NFL, I still must accept it and take responsibility for the situation. Elsewhere, Tyreek Hill is expected to report to Chiefs camp by Friday after the NFL decided against suspending him following a child abuse investigation. Joining me now to discuss is Michael McCann, legal analyst for Sports Illustrated and a law professor at UNH. Michael, from a legal standpoint, why the suspension of Reed and not for Hill?
Well, Kevin, from a legal standpoint, it's the discretion of Roger Goodell to decide what to do. So that's a key starting point, that he doesn't have to rely on the legal process, whether or not someone is charged, whether or not someone is sued, found guilty, anything like that. It's within the commissioner's discretion. Now, specifically here, with Reed, there was an allegation that he dragged a woman by the wrist for some length of distance in terms of within his residence. That was the accusation. The police, from what we understand from the Seattle Times, recommended that he be charged with assault. He wasn't, but it was a pretty damning accusation. With Hill, there was uncertainty as to whether or not he was responsible for injuries to his child. There was a threatening statement he made, and the NFL hasn't clarified why he wasn't suspended for that. But the bottom line is that Roger Goodell has the collectively bargained power to decide what to do, and there's no statute of limitations. Even though the Reed situation happened 2 years ago, that doesn't matter in terms of the rule.
Michael, let's dig deeper on the commissioner. How would you describe the consistency of the league right now as it relates to investigating and disciplining players in alleged domestic violence cases?
Well, I think it's better in the sense that there's now a process where the commissioner is relying on experts to evaluate fact patterns, domestic violence experts, those who have expertise in child care and violence. That's a good thing, that it's not just Roger Goodell deciding what to do. At the same time, how much is he relying on that advice? We don't know. There isn't that level of transparency. The NFL doesn't have to explain itself. And in the case of Reed, it really hasn't explained much of anything as to why it came to its decision. So there is more of a process now than years ago. That's a good thing. But look at Ezekiel Elliott's situation. From what we understand, the investigator's recommendation was that he not be suspended, and yet Goodell suspended him. So it's up to Goodell whether or not he even wants to rely on the experts.
Michael, this has been an underlying theme with the league for some time now. So how do we go about it, finding equitable ground in terms of meting out discipline?
Well, I think the only way we can resolve this, at least in terms of fans, if they're worried about whether players are going to be punished differently, is that the union has to negotiate a different policy, that under the collective bargaining agreement, Goodell has complete discretion. And we know that from Tom Brady's case, which obviously had nothing to do with domestic violence, but the decision in that case about football air pressure is binding on all of these player personnel matters because the court said it's up to Goodell. And the union has to do a better job of negotiating a policy. Now, quick thought, is it worth the union fighting for that when probably only 1% of players are actually impacted by this policy? You could argue it's better that they spend time on financial issues, pensions, healthcare, things like that.
Yeah, an issue I'm sure we will address again at some point. Michael McCann, legal analyst for Sports Illustrated, many thanks.